listening to episode 156 of the Tennis Files podcast, winning gold balls on the senior tour with Brent Abel. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Tennis Files podcast. My name is Mirbon Aranshad, a former Division I college tennis player, and on the show I interview the world's top pros, coaches, and experts to help you improve your tennis game. And today I have a very insightful interview with Brent Abel. And Brent is the founder of Web Tennis, where he's gotten over 10 million views of his content on his YouTube channel. And Brent has an impressive tennis resume. He's won 9 national USTA Gold Balls. He's also been the 70s age group captain of multiple USA Senior World Cup teams, and he's appeared on a couple of my tennis summits as of late. And today we're going to have a great conversation about the ins and outs of winning gold balls. And so, as I had just mentioned, these are national USTA tournaments, and it's very interesting to hear that there are some really great opportunities. You don't just have to be a professional tennis player in order to set high goals and achieve them. And one of these high, lofty goals is winning a gold ball or even silver or bronze balls. But we go into a lot of things here. We go into Brent's training, when he started actually trying to win a gold ball, his one of his wins when he was unseeded. I think that was his first one. The fitness and the training that's required to win, the nutrition, match strategies as well, and adjusting your game as you progress in your tennis career, aka you get older. And there's a lot of golden nuggets, I would say, that I gleaned from talking with Brent. And as I have been doing on many of my most recent podcast episodes, we actually recorded this as a live episode. So it was really fun to get a lot of enthusiastic questions from the audience. Perhaps you who are listening right now, you perhaps sent in a question as well. But it was a lot of fun to talk to Brent, and reinvigorating in the sense that, I myself, of course, I think I'm past the age where I can win a Grand Slam or anything like that. But however, they have many different age groups to be able to play tournaments, national tournaments, and win these coveted gold balls. And yeah, it's a lot of fun to try something like this, and perhaps you'll come out of this episode inspired to set a plan and a goal to try to pursue one of these championships. So with that introduction, I would like to introduce you to the episode now. So without further ado, here is my interview on winning gold balls on the senior tour with Brent Abel. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Tennis Files podcast. It's another very special one, as it is a live broadcast. So we're broadcasting live right now on YouTube and also on Facebook. And I want to welcome Brent Abel from Web Tennis. Brent, how's your day going?
Oh, Maribon, fantastic. Like we said before we started the broadcast, here in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, I mean, there's just not a bad day out here. You wake up here in the mornings and go, man, just don't screw this up. This is way too good. So all good here. Thank you.
Awesome. Very good. Yeah, things are good here. Fortunately, I know it's pretty crazy around the country. And yeah, I was wondering, how has tennis been overall in your area, as far as like people been able to play, restrictions, and so forth?
Yeah. So back when the restrictions started back in March, ironically, my wife, and I just won the National Husband-Wife Grass Courts at Mission Hills down in the desert. That was on March 14th. And I think the very next day, everything kind of got shut down. Mm. So we went there in the desert, March, April, for a few weeks where there was no tennis, but it was a great opportunity to get out, ride the bike, get some exercise. And then they let us back eventually, had to wear a mask for about a week, and then they just stopped doing that. So, and then here in Steamboat, it's been, you got to wear a mask if you go inside the clubhouse or inside the indoor courts, kind of check in. But other than that, but I just got actually a text on my phone this morning from the state of Colorado saying mandatory masks. So I don't know what that means. It may be when I show up at the Steamboat Tennis Center this morning that, I better be taking my mask. So we'll see.
Yeah, Brent, I think you should. I'm not going to divulge any names, but there was an incident recently within our leagues. I mean, I'm the chair of the Montgomery County Tennis Leagues, and there was someone who I guess caused a ruckus. And yeah, it's just, it's weird times. But I'm really happy to have you on, Brent, to talk about winning gold balls. You have like a great, I believe it's a podcast actually, with the same name, obviously, that's about winning gold balls. And so everybody should check that out. What's the full name of that again?
It's goldballhunting.com. And it's a podcast that my good friend, great tennis player, great coach, Jeff Jacklich, he and I actually did 365 episodes in a row to try to see if we can make it through a year. We actually did it. But that was sort of the, how do you take the guys who are consistently in the national category, won tournaments, the gold ball events, who are getting through a round or two, how do we help them get to the quarterfinals, something like that, so they actually have a chance to get in the semis and get to the ball round, whether it's, a gold, a silver, or a bronze. But that's the focus behind that. We haven't actually done an episode since, I think, January of this year, but there's obviously 365 podcasts there. You can go check them out.
Hopefully that's enough for all of you.
Yeah.
It is for me. It is for me. But really curious about the whole process of winning gold balls, because I know for a lot of us, of course, we can't be on the pro tour winning Wimbledon and so forth. But, there's this other avenue of winning a championship like this that is going to be so valuable and memorable for so many people. So I'm going to start with kind of like a broader question for you, which is, how hard is it to win a gold ball?
Wow. How hard is it? Well, it's really hard. It's really hard. It's kind of like one of those things where you've got to, if that's your goal, if you want to really kind of dive into the competitive thing and in terms of senior tennis, and look, age group tennis now, it used to be just, the 35s. I think it now starts in the 25s, and it's every 5-year increment. You get a new age group, but, it kind of depends. For me, it was hard because I was not a very good junior player. I played a lot of baseball as a kid, growing up in Berkeley, California. And even though I was born, or when I was born, my mom and dad were members of the Berkeley Tennis Club. So I grew up like about a 7-minute walk from the Berkeley Tennis Club, but I just did not play a ton of junior tennis. And I played a lot of baseball. I think I played one summer when I was in the 14s, tried to play some junior tournaments. Got beat by Eric Van Dillen, I think 3 times in a row, lost 0-0 every one of them. And I just said, screw it. This tennis thing's no fun. So I went back to playing baseball and then really never got going until I was probably in my mid-20s in terms of trying to really get out and, take advantage of the Berkeley Tennis Club and start playing some. So it took me a while because if you grew up as a junior player, and if you grew up as a great junior or great college player, and maybe even dabble in the pro tour a little bit, and after college, is you've got this foundation that I just never had, and so I did win my first gold ball in the 35s, my second year in the 35s, and it was kind of a fluke. It was the National 35 hardcourt doubles, and it was a full draw of 64. There weren't any buys. We weren't seeded. My partner and I, Rob Olson, and I were not seeded. And yet it was just one of those weeks where, we just couldn't do anything wrong. And we ended up, sort of taking it match by match, and finally got to the finals and went, well, we got nothing to lose here. And maybe played the best tennis I've ever played, at that thing. So that was kind of fluky, but I didn't win another gold ball until 25 years later.
Wow.
Which was the National 60 hardcourt singles. And so, 25 years between gold balls is, maybe a record. I don't know. But it's hard. It takes it takes, number one, you got to be able to show up at tournaments, at these Category 1 ball tournaments on a regular basis. I mean, you just can't cherry pick, well, I'm going to go play this tournament this year, the one tournament, because I'm best on clay or I'm best on grass or I'm best on a hard court. And just kind of, you just can't do that. I mean, the way you learn is you got to go get beat up over and over and over again. And rather than thinking, well, I'm going to train and I'm going to work and I'm going to point towards this one tournament because next year is my first year in that new age group. And everyone thinks that, well, my first year in a new age group, I'm the young guy. And yet it's the same players. I mean, the same players keep moving up with you anyway. So it's a minor advantage when you're, the first year or two in a new age group. But other than that, it's not really much of an advantage. But I think for me, it's been a long haul of trying to figure out, how do I become super efficient with stroke technique so that I can eliminate unforced idiot kind of errors as much as possible, and really starting to think more strategically about shot choice and court position rather than, hey, if I really work on my cross court forehand, well, that's going to be the thing that's maybe going to help me win a gold ball. That before, I've sat there and worked for years, 25 years between gold balls, thinking that's what I had to do, and it wasn't really that really wasn't the payoff. So yeah, it's hard, but it's doable, and it's kind of one of those things where you have to have some great coaching. You just have to have some great coaching. It's one of those things where you can figure it out on your own, but you do need to be able to show up at those events. You do need to be able to go to each one of the top players, not only ask them, questions, whatever it is, not only, beg, hey, can we go out and hit a few balls? I'll be happy to warm you up in your match. Yeah, I know you're playing tomorrow morning at 8:00. I've been out of the tournament for 2 days, but I'm happy to get out there whatever time you want. And the guy goes, fine, I'll see you at 7:00. And so you go out there and you hit for maybe 30 minutes and, you glean a little nugget and then you go watch these guys play. You watch the top guys play. And I think one of the big mistakes that I see is players thinking, well, if I watch Federer, if I watch Rafa, if I watch Novak, I watch how these guys stroke technique, whatever. It just doesn't translate to senior tennis. It doesn't translate to winning a gold ball. So there's a lot to it in terms of, I think you got to have some good coaching. I think you got to show up at every tournament you can, which means that if you're working full time and you're raising a family, and for me, I mean, I took probably 10, 12 years off between the 40s and kind of the 50s in terms of, raising a family and working, and just didn't have the time to be able to put into all of the off-court training, all the on-court training, and all the travel and all that, and just learning what it takes to be able to start winning not only the first round, but the second round, the third round, finding your name up there in the quarterfinals, in the last 8 guys of 128 draw, and just going, man, I mean, so all that stuff takes time. It takes work, and it kind of takes that mindset of just going, you know what? I'm not going to ever stop. I'm never, ever going to quit. I don't care how many bad losses I have. I'm just going to keep showing up, and I'm going to keep working. And I don't think there's a formula for it, right, Barabon? I can't tell you like, well, here's the gold ball winning formula.
Come on.
I can tell you what I did.
Yeah.
And some of what I did is duplicatable, but a lot of it's not. I mean, a lot of it's not. And so for a long-winded non-answer, there it is.
Good answer. A lot of things to take from that. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, first off, it's so wonderful to hear that even yourself, who essentially didn't start competing very seriously until like later on in your life, that you still have amassed, these great titles and experiences. And really curious too about, you mentioned that it's very important for us to talk to people who are where we want to be, and that's so important and smart. We shouldn't shoot for or try to emulate Federer if we're in our 50s, 60s, and beyond and trying to win a gold ball. It's just a different game. So on that note, what types of things have you changed in your game as you've progressed in your wisdom and sageness in your game to that you can maybe impart some wisdom upon us to help us?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of a mental, it's a mindset shift, moving from I've got to win the point on my own, meaning I've either got to hit a winner or I've got to hit such a great shot that it's really kind of a forced error by my opponent over there, as opposed to learning a lot more about court positioning, learning about, well, if I can constantly put myself in the right place on the court in relation to where the ball is over there, in relation to where my opponent is. I guess what I finally learned over the years is watching the top players going, these guys aren't hitting that many outright winners. And in fact, what they're doing is they always seem to be in the right place at the right time in terms of forcing their opponent to have to thread the needle. Right? So it could be that you play an approach shot, and it used to be for me, the mindset was, well, the approach shot should be the ball's not coming back. And too often I was putting pressure on myself where I would try to hit that kind of an approach shot, an outright winner, and just miss it, just flat out miss it. I would never, ever give myself a chance to allow that guy over there to participate in me winning the point. So I think the big mental shift for me is really what Jeff Jacklich and I talked about on Gold Ball Hunting for those 365 episodes, was let this guy participate. It's okay if he hits the tennis ball over there, whether it's singles, whether it's doubles. Just because they're about to hit the tennis ball does not necessarily mean that they've got the advantage. And I think what's happened in my game over the last 10 years, I can't prove it because I don't have the data. But if I'd been charting my matches, I think my winners to winning points ratio had really gone down, meaning I was hitting a lot less winners, and just either they weren't putting the ball back in play, or I was getting such an easy, just no-brainer volley. And I don't even call that a winner. I mean, if I'm up there at net, the guy just floats one up and he's off the court, all I've got to do is just tap it in. There's no stroke technique required. There's nothing fancy. I don't even look at that as a winner. So I think it's gone from thinking I want to take control of the point in such a way that balls don't come back to me, because I'm a little fearful that if balls come back to me, that's not a good thing. I don't trust the rest of my game to be able to, hey, if I need to stay in the point for 7-8 shots, can I do that? And, I used to be a pure serve and volley guy, right? First, second serve, second serve. I mean, first serve, second serve, return to serve, second serve. I'd always chip and charge and come in. And lots of times, depending on the first serve, I was always trying to get in. And if I got caught back in the baseline when I was returning serve, it was like almost any ball, Maribon, to me, looked like this is an approach shot opportunity. I don't want to be back here, right? Because I wanted to end the point as soon as I possibly could. And when I was younger and I had the legs and I could do that, it worked out okay, but it didn't work out as well as it has in the last 10 years for me, which is, look, if you've got to stay in the point for a little bit, if you got to hit a ground stroke or two, that's okay. But allow the other guy over there to touch the ball, unless you get the big, fat, chubby, wide open sitter, then fine. Then you can go ahead and kind of go for it. But I think it's that mindset of just thinking, it's okay to allow that guy to participate in me winning points, in me winning games, sets, and matches. And I can't tell you how many matches in the last maybe 5 years I've done nothing more than just say, well, not that I'm a pusher, because I am trying to get up. I am trying to force play. I am trying to make the guy thread the needle. All right, I'll give you 2 feet to my right. I'll give you 2 feet to my left. If you want to hit the perfect topspin lob over me, fine, go for it. But it's been a lot more about, I think players watch me play and they go, what's the big deal? This guy's not doing anything fantastic, but he's winning matches, right? Doesn't have a big weapon. And I would say my only weapon now has just been court position. It's just continually placing myself with the right. And that doesn't mean it's got to be up at net. You could also be back in the baseline as too. You play a shot and the guy looks up to play his shot and sees that you're once again right sort of bisecting. You're right in the middle of their two extreme angles. And sometimes that puts some mental pressure on them going, God dang it. First of all, this guy's not missing. Second of all, he's always in the right place at the right time when I'm about to play my shot. Maybe I need to go for a little bit more. And that's what I want them thinking. I want them thinking, you know what, I got to do a little bit more. Because if I don't, I'm not going to win the point. So I think it's that mindset shift over the years of watching the top guys and going, God dang it. I don't see them with a big weapon. I don't see them out there just blowing the by ball, the ball by guys. I just don't see that. And yet when you're on the court with them, you feel this pressure. You kind of feel like, God, I can't breathe, man. It's like they're constantly putting me under pressure, not with huge shots, but always making me move to a part of the court that maybe I don't want to be in. And I would say the biggest shot in the game, now that I'm in the 70s, I would say for the last 7 years, starting the 65s, the drop shot is like such a weapon. It's crazy. It's such a weapon. And, I'd never had really thought about a drop shot when I was younger. And so, if I was to do one thing to go back, man, I would stop trying to think I had to move the guys from side to side and go much more into, I need to work them up vertically, right? I need to drop them. I need to lob over their backhand. I need them, because it's much tougher, that kind of movement. I don't care what age you're at, than actually just trying to work them side to side. So there's something else right there, the dropper. And very, very few players actually work on it, right? They don't really, they might hit a couple in practice, but it drives me nuts now, Maribon. I see these videos on YouTube and on Facebook, and these young juniors or even the young adults, whatever it is. And if I was dropped down from Mars today and I looked at this thing, but someone said, well, here's tennis. And I would think, well, gosh, tennis is just a topspin forehand game. There's nothing else. I mean, so I guess to go back to your original question, what does it take? You got to have a complete game. You cannot rely on just, can I get a few more RPMs on my topspin forehand, because that will be the thing that's going to make me win a gold ball. No.
Yeah. And I mean, great points again. And, along with that, with being able to stay in the point and having that mindset, I know that you're going to need a great level of fitness, and, it looks like you're a fit guy, Brent. And so I was wondering, how much does it take? And also, what types of fitness training are you doing in order to be able to last those, 8 or 10 plus shots in these points?
Well, there's no question that if you're going to challenge for a gold ball, if you're in let's say a round of 64, right? The tournament might have a round of 64 that you got to play in, and that's 6 matches. If you're going to get to the finals, you got to win 6 matches. I've been rounds of 128, and that's an entire week, day after day after day. So you can't tell me that fitness is not crucial to being able to at least get, because look, what's to say that your draw is such that in the second round, you got to play a guy that should have been seated, but wasn't seated. And now all of a sudden you've just won this match in 3 hours, and you got to come back the next morning at 8:30 to play the third round. And so it's way more than just, can you survive the 8 shots in 1 point? It's, can you survive day after day after day? And if you're playing singles and doubles, it's really kind of a survival of the fittest. The beginning, before I really embraced fitness, I was actually doing okay in some of these category ones. I could get to the quarters, I could get to the semis, but by the time I got there, I was just beat up. I had nothing left in the tank. And so I just started working on my fitness in terms of core positioning. What do I need to do to be quicker? right? Because, I tried long distance running before thinking, well, that'll build up my legs. And yeah, it did. I got super strong. My legs, I could last all day long, but I couldn't move worth a lick.
Right.
I mean, I was so slow. So it's really finding that combination of what can you do off the court in terms of building up quickness, building up speed, and building up endurance, without doing so much that when you show up for the tournament, you're just totally dead. So for me, it's been, since I wasn't a great junior player, I wasn't a great adult player, college player. Like I said in the beginning, I had to figure out, well, what can I do efficiently here, stroke technique wise, so I'm not beating myself up. That's another reason why I don't agree with this whole thing about, well, we got to go full Western, we got to get windshield wiper in the forehand, we got to do all these things so we look like Rafa on the court. Because to me, if you're going to compete for a gold ball, and if you're going to have to do it over 5 or 6 days, why wouldn't you want to be stroke technique wise as efficient as possible on day one, day two? Because the more technique you have to bring, the more effort you have to bring into your game just to be able to play is taking away. If you win today, it's taking away some of the fuel from tomorrow's match. So to me, it's really about, fitness is about stroke technique efficiency, is about getting off the court as fast as you can in the early rounds, so you're not beat up early, and is that combination of fitness, which is about quickness and endurance. And for me, tennis is a difficult game because we have to visually track a moving tennis ball, and we have to do that while we're also on the move. So golfers, yeah, okay, I know it's a tough game, but the ball's sitting there and the golfer gets to actually come up and kind of position themselves wherever they want. So they put themselves into the ideal swing setup position, the ideal contact position. We don't have that luxury. Baseball hitters, right? Baseball, you're standing there, but you got to deal with a moving ball that's kind of coming in, and they're trying to make the ball move in different ways. And so, but baseball doesn't have that thing where you have to move too. So for me, the training is like, one of the things I love to do is I love to do a lot of sprints, right? So I do a lot of sprints and I like to do it off of the hard court. So I either want to do it on a grass court, which I've got at Mission Hills Country Club down the desert, or else on a clay court. Or if I can't do it there, I'll find some area that's got a soft surface. But so tennis courts are 120 by 60, right? So from fence to fence is 120 feet. So I like to start at one fence, obviously go to the side of the net, because I'm going to run the entire distance, 120 feet. But what I do is I find a stationary spot, or I find a spot on that far fence I'm running to. And my whole goal is that when I'm sprinting towards that fence, visually locked on that spot, I'm trying to keep my head and body so smooth as I'm sprinting, so that thing is not jumping up and down over there. And the more I can train myself to do that, the better it is when I get out in the court in terms of being able to visually track a moving tennis ball as I'm also on the move. And really what that all adds up to is being a lot more consistent as a shot maker, because you are arriving spatially to the path of that incoming ball consistently, much more where you want to be, as opposed to not, where maybe the tennis ball is kind of lurching through its flight as it comes to you. So, and you got to be able to do that over 3 sets. You got to be able to do that over 6 days, 7 days. And so not only is you got to figure out what is the best training for you, because your body type's different than mine, and so on and so forth, right? The other thing for me has been nutrition. And I've finally over the years figured out, let's see. And so I think it's about 2.5 years ago, my wife, and I changed our diets. And not that I preach any kind of diet at all, but I was having some digestive issues with red meat. And I finally just said, look, let's try it for 30 days without it. We got off it. And I initially lost about, 7 or 8 pounds. And at the time I was in what I thought was really great shape, but I just dropped 7 or 8 pounds of apparently unneeded, body weight. And so, and I kind of feel the same thing works as we get like every 5 years. I just kind of think, well, maybe I should drop a pound or two as I get older, just because our skeletal systems probably get stressed a little bit more with all the tennis, all the training. I can't prove it. I don't know. But there's no question that fitness and nutrition are a major component to being able to compete for a gold ball. No question.
100%. Yeah, no, thanks for that. I mean, I feel like even, some juniors or adult players who are even more skilled than the players in those higher age groups, a lot of them might not be fit enough to survive the entire tournament there. But we got some great questions that I'm scanning down here. One was about rackets, and I'm going to put it up on the screen now. And Greg asks, how about comments on choice of rackets for senior players, particularly players in the 60s and up? So any thoughts on rackets?
Well, this is coming from the great Greg Hepner I know Greg, good guy, heck of a tennis player. And you talk about stroke technique efficiency. This guy's off the charts in terms of clean strokes. Look, I started playing with an oversized racket back in the 35s. So I started playing with a 110, which back then was like the biggest thing in the world, right? People saying, well, isn't that illegal, a 110? Well, and the reason I did is because I just felt like, look, the bigger the racket head, assuming I could control it, right? Assuming that I could control it, would simply mean I had a little bit bigger sweet spot, but I get a little more power, a little more spin without having to bring as much stroke technique into the swing. And I think a lot of players feel that, well, if I get too big of a racket head, I lose control. And that's true, because you get a little bit more of a trampoline effect off that. But there's different ways to string the rackets, different tensions, obviously. And look, if you're playing a ton of doubles, I mean, it just makes sense. So you're up at the net so often in doubles that a little bit bigger racket head just makes it easier. In terms of reflex volleys, I mean, you just can't argue with it. So over the years, I've stayed with a 110, and I finally got into Babolat, the original Pure drives. And I would say about 4 years ago, I started running out of them because they hadn't made them for about 7 or 8 years. And I was trying to find them on eBay, and I was, begging people to sell me some beat up old Babolat 110 Pure drive. Anyway, so someone had given me a Weed 125, the Weed 125 EX, I don't know, about a year or so before, sitting in my garage. And so I was about to go play the National 65 indoors in Minneapolis in about a week. And so I just took this racket out, hit some balls with the guy. It felt great. I said, all right. So I called up Dennis at Weed. I said, look, can you overnight me another racket? So I've got 2 to go to Minneapolis with. And he said, fine. So I got 2 rackets. I went up there and I said, well, I got the perfect excuse if I don't play well, because I left my old rackets at home, brought the 2 Weeds with me. And I just said, like, if I don't play well, okay, it's because of the racket, blah, blah, blah. Well, and I ended up having a great tournament. And I just haven't looked back, since then. It took me, the forehand groundy was a little shaky in the beginning, was kind of flying around. And the more I thought about it, the more it just didn't get fixed. And eventually I just said, screw it. And I just stopped thinking about it. And like overnight, once I stopped thinking about it, it just got better. So look, I've had to sort of tinker with string bed setup.
Mm-hmm.
I used to go with an 18 gauge synthetic gut.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Break a lot?
Broke it a ton. And it was 18 gauge at like 70 pounds because I was scared to death with a 125. It would fly all over, right? So it didn't fly all over, but I had zero feel. I mean, I'd try a drop shot and the thing would land on the baseline, or I'd try a drop shot and, it'd roll up to the net. So I finally hit on a poly main, 17 gauge poly mains, and then a 16, and then still the 18 gauge for the crosses. And I can't break those strings. I mean, so, and that's just, and I string those up at about 63. And for whatever reason, that works for me. I get questions all the time. Well, what do you think is the best racket for me to play with? And I just say, I frankly don't know. I just said, here's what I do and here's why I do it. Here's my string setup. And I say, but my recommendation, the way I do it, I haven't run into anyone else that I know that plays with a weed that does all this that they do the same thing. I know guys who play with a weed racket, same model, and they string it with gut at like 35 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't play with that, but they couldn't play with the way I do it. So the only way that you can really figure this thing out is to, hopefully get a demo and go out there and just tinker with it and see what works for you. And that's the only advice I can give. But Greg Hefner, I don't know what he's asking about. I mean, this guy, he's a great player.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for the question, Greg. And I think a video for you, Brent, that would really blow up on YouTube would be winning with weed. And that would.
Well, it's legal in Colorado. I know it's now legal in California.
Yeah.
So, you mean the weed racket?
Yeah, with the racket, but
the
whole wordplay. I'm horrible with puns. I do a lot of them.
That's a good one. Winning with weed. Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we have another fellow player, actually. I don't know if you remember Frank Van Lerven, but apparently you played against Frank before. And so he has a comment. Well, a few of them. We don't have gold balls in Europe, so my focus is senior world championships.
Right.
And he's got a path similar to yours, Brent. And then he said that he played you in Umag last year. Do you remember playing Frank?
I do remember playing Frank. I recall, I think it was the first round. We played a 65s tournament, actually, before the team event there. So Umag last year had the World Cup team event. It was in September. Can't remember the dates. I was fortunate to be captain of the 4-man USA World Cup team. And one of my teammates and I went over there. And Steve and I went over there a week early to play a 65s doubles before the team event, the 70s team event. And I think we played Frank in the first round, as I recall. As I recall, it was a tough match. So what's his questions?
I just put the comment there. Yeah, I was I don't want to get it too much into
that. It's a pretty contentious match as well. Yeah. As I recall, well, look, I'm not going to get into it.
Yeah, you don't have to do that. Yeah. It's fine. But yeah, it's cool to hear from Frank and from other people who have played you. Mark has a question about mixed doubles at the national level. Any particular observations on that?
Mark Wagner, a great tennis player from Northern California. He and I actually played some doubles back in the day when we were a lot younger. He had to carry me in all of those tournaments. He was really one of the top guys in NorCal, and I was just starting to kind of learn how to play. The mixed doubles thing is, my wife and I have won 6 national husband-wife gold balls, right? We've won, 3 clay, 2 grass, and 1 hard court. And that's a little different than mixed because it's a husband-wife deal. And for us, the first couple of years, it really took us a couple of years before I figured out that I've got to stop wanting it so much for my wife to win that I was sort of overplaying, right? I was trying to go back to what I told you I used to do, which was try to control the point, was to try to win the point, rather than trust and just say, look, she's a good player. She's a 5-0 women's player. She knows what she's doing. And yet I knew that she really wanted to win badly, right? I knew she'd never won a gold ball before. She wanted to win one, and I wanted to win it for her. So it took us a couple of years to finally figure out that. And this is, Mark's question is mixed doubles, and I'm assuming it's at that kind of 10-0 mixed doubles level, where you've got both players who are, all four players are a pretty equal ability. And so I think instinctively the guy wants to sort of dominate. And what I found with my wife is that just the opposite works. If I can actually be the steady one and she's a lefty. We've got her over in the deuce side, returning serve. I'm on the ad side. If I can just get the ball over the cross court in front of her, she's got this lefty thing where it's mean. And she loves to go out there. She loves to poach. She loves to cross. So And yet I've also played some mixed with some gals who don't want to do that. They want to be back in the baseline. And so for me, I say that's fine. If you're more comfortable back there in the baseline, then that's where I want you to be. I'm not going to tell you got to do what my wife does. Let's put you in your comfort zone. If that comfort zone is back in the baseline, then here's our strategy. You're going to do one of two things. You're either going to try to hit the ball cross court, put it in front of me, let me do something, or you're going to lob. And if it's a good lob, what's going to happen is the chances are it'll be another lob coming back. And maybe that helps me, right? So I don't know if that's answering Mark's questions, but I just think at the national level, mixed doubles, it's great tennis. There's some really great mixed doubles teams, and it's fun. And it's a great way to learn about your game. I mean, a lot of people think, a lot of players go out mixed doubles. Hey, look, one of my serious learning paths to becoming a better player has been playing a lot of mixed. And I played a lot of mixed, without my wife, back in the 50s, back in the 55s. And the only reason I did was they offered singles, doubles, and mixed. And they didn't have any restrictions. It said, if you want to play all three events, you can do that. And I just knew, I said, look, I looked at the men's draw and I said, chances are I'm not going to win this tournament, the singles thing. So why not maximize my time there by playing in three events?
Mm-hmm.
So the more you can put yourself out there in tournament match situations or league match situations where the results are made public, right? They're posted somewhere online. A little extra pressure on that. To me, that's where the learning really, really happens. It's one thing to play practice matches at your comfy confines of your tennis club.
Yeah.
But you're playing the same guy most of the time. You guys know what's going on. And to me, there's not a lot of learning going on. That could be a great fitness opportunity. And, I do that lots of times in just practice matches. Points over, I'll sprint to go get the ball, right? Points over, I'll sprint to get the ball.
Like it.
So, Mark, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff. And it takes a lot of hard work. I really enjoy how you're hammering home that we need to put ourselves continually in these pressure situations, because that's the only way that you're going to gradually get comfortable with those situations. And, that's when your true competitive game comes out is obviously when you're competing, right? So
Yeah. I mean, back when I started playing senior tournaments, I was so tight. I was so nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was a time where I lost to a guy. I just went, oh my God, I cannot believe I lost this guy who I thought on paper, well, not on paper, but you watch this guy play, you go, this guy can't break an egg. And yet, he was pushing and all this stuff, but I was so nervous, so tight. And I finally figured out, I just said, look, I've got to find a way to break through the nerves, because if I don't, I'm never really going to learn how to play the game. And so my philosophy or the way that I did it back then was I looked at my calendar, looked at my work schedule, and I said, I've got to shove as many tournaments into my calendar as I possibly can without even thinking about winning or losing, just so I can go out there and start to desensitize myself to the nerves, right? Because, very few people are naturally not nervous. Most people have got they get tight, whether it's start of the match or whether it's now they're serving at 4-2 in the second. They won the first set and they're going, man, I can taste the finish line. And the nerves or the tightness starts to get in there. And my only solution has been to, how often can I put myself in those situations where I just desensitize myself to that feeling.
Yeah. No, I love it. That's huge for all of us. In doing some research about gold balls, I saw that Dodo Cheney won 394 gold balls, which is insane. And then she won her first one, I think, at the age of 55. So that when you mentioned that you play multiple age groups, I think that's obviously what she did.
Well, just do the math on that.
Insane.
It's insanity.
Yeah.
So she's playing singles, doubles. She's playing every mix she can get into. She's playing every kind of event. She had the luxury of, her husband was a pilot, commercial pilot. So she could fly all over the place, do this, do that. She played all the tournaments. And of course, her son, Brian Cheney, a guy in my age group, senior legend. I mean, this guy, talk about a guy who I've learned so much about the game of tennis. Not only in terms of stroke technique, but in terms of tactics and strategies, court positioning, mental. This guy, Brian. Anyway, we could do a whole thing on just him alone.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so one other interesting thing that I read, and which makes sense, but I'm curious if you have come upon this, is that some players allegedly they pay former pros and whatnot to play with them so that they could win a gold ball, which is getting my gears turning personally. But have you ever experienced that or played against some players who have done that?
Sure. Oh yeah, and it's whatever. It's
Yeah.
kind of a novelty to me, right? And then you go out against those guys, and the good player just never sees a tennis ball. I mean, right? So
Oof.
because typically what happens is the guy who's paying the pro,
Yeah.
right, is probably not all that great as a player,
Yeah.
and he's kind of hoping, well, maybe I'll buy my way in. And there have been a few guys I've known who've bought their way to a gold ball, but they're good. They're good. They're just trying to take the next step up,
Yeah.
and find that guy who might normally not play with this guy, and there you go. So it happens.
Yeah. I mean, Brent, why do you think I'm doing this podcast? I'm just setting up the relationships with all these guests so that I can then, cash in.
Yeah. Well, if you're talking about, well, I'll tell you what. Let's get out in the court, and we'll do a little coaching thing, and then we'll set a price, and we'll do an interview, and we'll get Mirabon up for auction.
Fantastic. No, the other way around. But curious, Brent, how much resistance training and mobility and stretching have you or do you do, and has that increased quite a bit over the years since you started training very seriously and winning gold balls and such?
Yeah, I was never stretched ever.
Yeah.
And everyone telling me I've got daughters who are certified yoga instructors, and they're going, Dad, what's the deal? How come you don't even stretch? I mean, one thing would be doing yoga on a regular basis, but you don't even stretch. And so over the last 10 years or so, I've gotten into a stretching routine. I'm not super limber. I'm not super, I'm not a yogi. I don't go to yoga classes. I don't do the stuff, but I do about a 15-minute routine after either I've done some off-court training or I've done some, tennis. I just go home. It's super simple. And all I'm trying to do is just sort of stretch out the legs, stretch out the hamstrings most of all, and stretch out the lower back, shoulders. It's really simple, but it's really helped. It has really helped a lot, I think, to help me when I'm in a Category 1 tournament, a ball tournament, to be able to survive from day to day. So, as you asked the question, I was thinking back to tournament. I think my second year in 65s in Minneapolis, the indoors, and I was just kind of shocked because I would play my singles, and then I would go to this part of the gym, and a lot of the other guys had finished their matches, and they were all upstairs at the bar, or they were all upstairs, eating lunch or doing whatever. And I just thought, man, there's just nobody. No one is really doing this, where it feels like to me there's just so much benefit, even if you're not spending an hour, which I couldn't do. I couldn't, unless there was someone who was guiding me through it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, 15 minutes just works. You might need less, you might need more. I don't know. But I think there's a ton of value in stretching yourself back out after you played. I don't do any stretching before. I mean, all the things I've read and heard about stretching before you really kind of warmed up, not smart. I mean, I'll do some dynamic kind of warming up before I play, but I don't do any stretching. So yeah, I'm not the guy who will tell you, oh yeah, well, every, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and one day on the weekends, I go into my hot yoga and I do that. Look, and if guys do that and it works, do it. Just keep doing it. Try it. Maybe even try it. But for me, I found that all I need is about, and would I be better if it was more than 15 minutes? Probably. I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, and look, 15 minutes is no big deal. That's not a big time, not a big time suck out of your schedule. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's huge because a lot of people, what they do, if they figure out, okay, to get better, I need to work out or have a routine. What they do is they say, okay, 45 minutes, and then they think, oh, I can't do this, But instead, just setting up a doable amount of time, maybe even something like 5-10 minutes in the beginning, and then you get consistent, then you can
Right.
bring it up a little bit each time. So that's great to hear, and it's obviously working.
Well, you just brought up the word. I mean, you just brought up the word, which is consistency.
Yeah.
You gotta build some habits. And for me, the stretching thing was kind of a, I just God dang it. All right. Well, let's do it. Like you said, let's do it for 5-7 minutes today.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a habit, and the payoff is not immediate. Payoff takes time. You may not feel anything for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. But then you start to realize that, what, I felt a little better on that out wide slice backhand today. I felt a little bit more limber, a little bit more on balance. And that's probably because the stretching you've been doing, that habit that you built up.
Yeah, 100%. Is your preparation for singles matches any different than doubles in terms of formulating game plans or practice routines or anything of that nature?
So are you talking about like you're at the tournament, you're in the tournament, and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if I've got a known opponent in singles or known opponents in doubles, I'm going to be thinking about primarily what do they not want me to do, right? What part of the court do they not want me to take them into? What part of the court do they not want me in?
Mhm.
And so I'll be thinking strategically or tactically like that. Again, it gets back to more a shot choice. Where do I want the ball to land over there? And then where do I want to move to next on the court? And part of shot choice is, well, where am I trying to move them? So we all heard this term about, well, it's really great to be an all court player where you can, you could serve and volley, you could chip and charge, you could stay back, you could play groundies, you could really play from all parts of the court. And I think what I've sort of hit on the last few years is, well, I want to force my opponent to be an all court player. I want to force them into different parts of the court. And if I've never played them before, part of the first few games is kind of probing to see what parts of the court did they not like as much. What parts of the court where they go over there and they really kind of go for the winner. They really, because for whatever reason. So for me, it's less about looking for, well, they got kind of a weak backhand, or they got a weak this, or they got a strong this. And so to me, it's much more about where do I want to put them in the court? If it's a known opponent, then I've got some intel already. And then if it's not a known opponent, well, look, I mean, I'm only smart if I go out and ask someone, hey, have you played so and so? And if that's the case, I'll get little intel. Doesn't always work out. Someone might say, "Oh man, you got this guy." I was like, don't say that. I don't want. That's kind of the kiss of death right there.
Yeah, it is.
But I'll just ask him about certain things, and I'll keep that in my mind. But is that always the game plan? Not always. And lots of times the game plan is kind of based on me executing certain things, right? And on that day, for whatever reason, I come out of the blocks. I'm not executing the thing I need to be able to kind of deploy certain tactics. So then it gets into, well, what adjustments do I have to make temporarily? Not maybe for the rest of the match, but maybe if I could just do something for the next 5 minutes, that would be a little bit different. That would kind of get me back into executing what I need to do. Then I'll just do that. The doubles thing is again, it's the same thing. You go to your partner, and and I rarely play a Category 1 tournament with someone I'd never played with before. I mean, it's always someone I know. I've got some history with, right? So actually, when I say that, and I'm looking at Frank's comment there, I played with Steve in Umag, and we never played before. We never played doubles before, and so we had to kind of work it out, right? We sort of had to work some things out. We didn't know our opponents at all, and so I would say, if that's the case, then you just kind of go, well, what's your comfort level? What do you feel best doing? And you try that for a set. If it works, great, keep going. If not, going, man, you think we ought to change anything? And then Steve and I, as we went through that tournament last year, I just got more and more confident knowing I know what he's going to do with this shot.
Mm-hmm.
I know how he now thinks.
Yeah.
And so much of that is knowing how your partner thinks and what they're about to do. But in terms of strategizing, I mean, Steve and I played, I think, 4 matches to win the tournament. We didn't know anybody. In the finals, all we knew was, oh, well, you guys are playing the number 2 or 3 guys ranked in the world, the ITF points in the world, in the 65s. And all people just said, oh, they're really good. Great. Could you help me out a little more than just that? So we just kind of navigated our way. The first set was tight, and the second set, we just kind of got rolling. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, beautiful. Great stuff there. Jay Look has a question here. Is there a benefit to becoming a yogi versus average good flexibility? Think the more the better?
I think it's personal. I think it's individual. I would say that if I was taking yoga classes 3 times a week, I'd probably be a better player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's me personally.
Yeah.
That's me personally. I think some players might at this point be better off spending. So if you're taking 3 classes a week, what's that? 60, 90 minutes a class?
Yeah.
I've never taken one, so I don't know. But let's say it's 60 minutes. Well, that's 3 hours. Are you better off spending some of that time on your game, on the court, or off-court training? I don't know. For me right now, I've sort of settled in over the decades knowing here's who I am. Here's what I know about my game. There aren't going to be any major wholesale changes to stroke technique or tactics and strategies. Maybe the mental thing will get a little bit better, which it can always do. So maybe for me, stretching more would be a real benefit. But if someone is, someone's knocking on the door of, I can win a round, I can win 2 rounds, but then I'm struggling in, let's say, the round of 16 to be able to advance in the category 1, the gold ball tournament. Well, maybe you're better off breaking up that once a week 60-minute yoga thing into 4 15-minute things throughout the week, and spending those other 2 hours working on your game.
Yeah, beautifully put. I mean, you really have to self-assess and figure out, why am I winning? Why am I losing? What part of the game that I work on right now will give me the biggest return on investment? So you may be already flexible enough, but maybe the problem is your mindset, or the problem is your backhand that's getting picked on every match. Yeah, like Brent said, you've got to do a self-evaluation there. Great question here from Rich. Or yeah, even in your 70s, why do you love the game so much?
Okay. All right. This is the great Rich Crinks from Alameda, California. So I think my early morning promo, Maribon, must have gotten some of my boys on the podcast today. Rich, for me, and he and I are good friends, and we know each other well.
Cool.
And we actually both come from baseball backgrounds. And so I'm just a competitive person, right? I mean, I just love that. I love that feeling, getting out there and kind of putting it on the line, and seeing what happens. And, my wife, she loves to go out there and go, oh, honey, did you see the bird? Look at that beautiful bird over there. And I'm going, okay. I mean, I'm not out there for a beautiful day, right? I mean, if I'm practicing and this and that, I just love to compete. And I don't know. I mean, I think if you love to compete, you know what that feeling is. It's just kind of, it's in your blood. I don't think I do know with me, I do have a hard time sustaining that thing throughout the entire year. So I mentioned Brian Chaney before, Dodo Chaney's son. Mm-hmm. This guy is a machine. I mean, this guy can go 12 months a year, 365 days, and just play tournament after tournament after tournament. I can't do that. I know that about myself. I can show up, and kind of the tournament schedule for me the last few years has been starting in January down the desert. There's 4 tournaments down there, working its way through a couple of nationals, and then finally by the end of June, on some years I've done some traveling, the desert, Northern California, Baton Rouge, Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, within that 6 or 7 month period. And I'm just going, you know what, I'm done. And it's enough tournaments to, if I need to have some results, to try to be selected, try to be considered for the USA World Cup team for that year, then that's plenty of results for them to consider me. And look, we're here in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. We love coming up here in the summer and the fall. And so for me, it's a time to kind of get off of the intensity of all the training, the intensity of knowing that, all right, in 3 weeks I got another tournament coming up. I just played a tournament on hard court. I got another tournament now coming up on clay. So what am I going to do to prepare? And all of that, there is some stress in it, but I kind of like it. I kind of like it. And so to answer Rich's question, look, we know people who are a lot older than 70. I know guys in their 80s. I've seen players in their 90s. These guys are just locked in, right? So I don't think we ever get rid of that love of competition. And a lot of it for me is I love the training. I love that stuff. I love, when I'm at Berkeley, I don't do it anymore, but I used to be able to, at Berkeley Tennis Club, play my tennis, go to my locker, take off my tennis shoes, put my running shoes on, jog the 1 mile over to Memorial Stadium over at Cal. And back then, the place was wide open. This is one of the original, football only stadiums, a bowl. And 75 rows to the top. And so I'd run the stairs over there, and you'd get to the western side of the stadium, and you'd look over the East Bay, over the Bay Area, over to San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge. You go, well, wow. I think I'm the only one who's doing that today. No one else is doing that.
Nice.
And for me, that was something that I needed to do to build confidence in my tennis, thinking that I'm outworking these guys.
Yeah.
And because I didn't have the luxury of playing a ton of junior tennis, kind of getting that foundation of junior tennis, didn't have the thing as an adult. And so I'm not saying that's the formula, but for me, it was. I had to build a way of getting confident with my tennis. And the way was, for me, can I feel that I'm outworking these guys every single day?
Yeah. Beautiful. So, yeah. Just like you said, sometimes if you feel like your opponents have one advantage over you, then you have to shift and figure out, how can I get the advantage and go against theirs and win. And you found that the confidence and fitness.
Yeah. And I learned early on that there was a guy, his name was Steve Turpin from Sacramento, great junior player. I played him once in the juniors. He just kicked my butt that one summer in the 14s. And then I had to play him in the 35s, which was like, 20 years later. And so, and I'm nervous. I got to play this guy. And I got to go, oh my God, I remember him beating me 11-11 in the juniors. Well, here it is 20 years later. And, he obviously had not been playing much, and he'd put on a few pounds. And even though I was a little tight in the beginning, I finally realized this guy is not the same player. And the reason I could compete with him is because I'd been devoting myself to fitness and playing a lot and practicing. And I found that over the years that there have been some tough guys that I played, some great players who just could not hang with me if we got into the third set.
Yep.
Even though the strokes, you look at this guy, beautiful, everything, just cleaner than a whistle. But look, cleaner than a whistle doesn't work if they can't get over the tennis ball. So
fitness, love it. Amazing. Yeah. Oh, Dick says conditioning needs to be done when playing 2-hour matches in 90-degree weather. Nice.
Yeah. I've looked at practice sets. Now I've told this guy, hey, it's 90 degrees today. We're playing 3 sets regardless. If someone wins the first 2, we're still playing a third. And again, I look at that as a fitness opportunity. Maybe I'm working on something. I'm not really concerned if I win the sets because there is something I want to kind of work out and kind of feel. But I'll also look at this. Wow, what a great day to go out there and use this as a fitness opportunity. And it may be nothing more than, all right, my whole goal for today, I'm not working on a tactic. I'm not working on a stroke. I'm not working on winning. All I'm going to do today is I'm going to hustle. I'm going to out hustle every single ball. And if I come away after 2 hours of doing that, then you know what? I know it's paid off. And maybe it didn't pay off that day, but it, somewhere tomorrow, somewhere down the road, it's going to pay off.
Yeah, when it's tough conditions like that. Fantastic. Good. Yeah.
I got a couple more minutes and then I got to scoot.
That's right. Yeah. And Gina has a good comment about yoga helping mindfulness. So I want to ask you, Brent, about web tennis, obviously, where everybody should go and check out webtennis.com, and also obviously your YouTube channel. I was curious about how you got into that and, what the goal is of web tennis.
Good question. So back in 1998, I turned 50. And just seems like, Maribon, every time there's a birthday that has a 0 at the end of it, I kind of go, wow, let's see, where have I been? Where am I now? And, where do I want to go to?
Yeah.
And in 1998, I was teaching a lot of tennis. I was teaching about 35, 40 hours a week. And my body was pretty beat up from all that. And I was just kind of looking for, is there another way that I can get my tennis knowledge, my tennis expertise out there without having to be feeding balls on a tennis court, and literally for the rest of my life, because making a decent living doing that, but not really getting ahead to the point where, boy, well, if I do this for another 20 years, the retirement thing will kick in. I just didn't see that. So there was this thing in 1998 called the internet, and yeah, it was this thing. There were very few commercial applications. And there was one tennis website, I think it was called First Service or First Serve or something like that. One of my really good friends, great guy, Jim McLennan, was part of that. And anyway, so I just thought, well, maybe there's a way this internet thing, I could do it. So I got my first domain in 1999, webtennis.net. I couldn't buy .com because there was some guy in South America who was cyber squatting on webtennis.com. He wasn't doing anything with it. It took me a couple of years to be able to buy it from him. But I was working at the California Tennis Club at the time, San Francisco. And so before I got up, had to commute in the morning, my lunchtime hours, and then at night, I just started tinkering. How am I going to make this work? And back then, there was no high-speed internet. There was dial-up. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't do video, you couldn't do audio. And the only way that you could kind of get your information out there was through text. So one of the great pieces of advice I got back then is, well, just write as if you're on the court teaching. Just, what would your voice be? So that at least you're trying to get your unique voice out there. So over the course from 1999, got the domain, figured out how to build a crappy little website. It was terrible. Just horrible. Yeah. How do you build a email list that you can kind of automate where you don't have to manually put in names and email addresses? And then eventually got a merchant account, started, making some crappy little courses and got them out there. And 6 years later in 2005, I just said, look, if I can do this thing full time, I think I can make a go of it. So kind of took a risk, told the guys at the Cal Club, San Francisco, love you guys, but you know what? I'm out of here in October. Yeah. And so I retired from the club thing in October 2005. Took me a couple of years to spend full time going after it, but I eventually replaced my income from being tennis director and head pro at the Cal Club. And that's allowed me ever since then to really do what I want to do, which has been to train, to play. If I get an internet connection, I can do my business. So my focus has been over all those years is building courses, helping players with strokes, with technique, tactic strategies, the mental stuff, fitness. And then recently, the last few months, I've really gotten into a company called Purium that has, for me, I've always believed in supplements. in terms of no matter how well we eat, I still think we need help. So, so I'm building a residual income program with Pure and help a lot of people in terms of the one thing that's really helped me do is get off of ibuprofen, right? So, you talk about all the training, daily tennis, daily off court stuff. I mean, I was having to suck down 2 or 3 ibuprofen almost every day. Oof. And I think we all know, no, that's just not great. So I've gotten some help. I've been off of ibuprofen now for about 3 months because of Purium. And helping people lose weight, helping people in other areas of their health and fitness. And right now with COVID going on, I mean, what's top of mind? I mean, top of mind's immune boost. I mean, who's not thinking, what can I do to protect myself? So, yeah, I mean, if you want some more stuff, some more information about what I'm doing, just go to webtennis.com. And I'll give you a free course about how to help you with your topspin second serve. The other thing is, like you said, go over to my YouTube channel. Just go over to YouTube, search Web Tennis, and you'll find me. And yeah, you can, if you want to shoot me an email, brent@webtennis.com. I'm on Facebook as well, over at Web Tennis.
Love it. Yeah, I was going to suggest to everybody, because we still have some other questions and we really appreciate it, but Brent has got to run, a busy guy. And so feel free to email Brent, as I'm sure he'll be okay with. Before I let you go, Brent, classic question I always ask: what is one key tip that you can tell us to help us improve our tennis game?
One key tip. Well, I think the thing would be, and I really don't talk much about stroke technique with players because I want them focusing more on core positioning and shot choice. But the one thing that I got early on from Tom Stowe was the guy who helped me back in the 80s in terms of coaching me, is he said, look, my job is to take away all the extra stuff that you do with stroke technique that you just don't need. And so I would ask players to kind of take a look at themselves, videos of the best way to do it is, what are you doing stroke technique that is absolutely not needed? Because the more stuff you add stroke technique wise, the less consistent you're going to be as a shot maker. And look, I'll make this offer. If you guys want to take a short little video on one of your strokes, you can send it to me. I won't charge you for it. I'll take a look, and I'll do what Tom Stowe did for me. I'll start taking parts away and say, you don't need that part.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Brent. It was a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, everybody, and Brent, and we'll see you all again very soon.
Thanks, Maribon. A lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Brent. You too.
Bye.
All right. I really hope you enjoyed my interview with Brent Abel. And Brent, really appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights about what it takes to win a gold ball and become a national champion. Whether that's strategy, mindset, or even fitness. And speaking of fitness, I've lately been creating some content around that, videos, podcasts, and also PDF files, which is free resources for you about fitness. And one of these is a lower body strength routine. And if you'd like to get a free downloadable PDF of that exact workout with tips on how to perform them, then you can go to tennisfiles.com/leg workout. That's tennisfiles.com/leg workout to get that free download. And speaking of which as well, I just recorded a live workout with my friend Dean Hollingworth, who is an expert tennis fitness trainer and has trained some really great professional players, as well as many amateur and junior players as well. And so if you go to tennisfiles.com/YouTube, you can see Dean train me through an entire workout. So we went from the stretching to the workout, from dynamic warm up to the workout, which is full body, tennis specific, then to stretching. So we did it all, a little bit over an hour, I think. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And really would appreciate it if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you're on your podcast app right now, then you can take the simple step of hitting the subscribe button on that, which would really help out my podcast channel. It would help it be more visible to everybody else by virtue of just getting more subscriptions, I guess. And the same with the YouTube channel. So I really appreciate any support that you can give in the form of subscribing and also likes and comments, any of those that you have time to do. And besides that, I just want to leave you with a quote that I actually just posted on Instagram today. So it's another outlet that you can go to follow me, and I post content on that, my team and I, every single day. So you will always be able to see some content to help your game there. And my nickname there is tennis.files. So tennis.files. And the quote today is by Ken Robinson. And Ken said, "If you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original." This is extremely important and applicable to tennis as well, in that you really need to experiment, try new things, and don't be afraid to fail at something, because it definitely takes a lot of trial and error and persistence as well, and follow through to be able to create new and innovative ways to approach the game. So great quote there by Ken. All right. Well, with that, I really appreciate you all tuning in as always, and always great to hear from you. And I'm really excited to just keep continuing to produce more content, whether that's the podcast or videos on YouTube, which I'm going to do weekly, or written, any types. I'm down to create it, and social and etc. So have a great one. Please be safe and enjoy, and keep trying to learn, keep learning and improving yourself every single day, even just by a little bit, and you will really reap the benefits and rewards. All right. Thanks for listening to the Tennis Files podcast on the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. This is Mirban Naranchad signing out.